If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. I learned this the hard way with my first company, so I created NetSuite, the world's #1 cloud business system. NetSuite gives you the visibility and control you need to make smart decisions and grow with confidence. That's why companies who use NetSuite grow 3 times faster than the S&P 500.
Schedule your free product tour right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Digital Leader Show, where we talk key issues and news at the intersection of business and technology in hopes of making you a better digital leader. We're live every Wednesday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the audio recording is available on major podcast platforms the following week. Today, we're discussing, will AI destroy education as we know it, plus other tech business headlines for the week. Thanks to our sponsor, Oracle NetSuite. Their unified cloud business management solution helps organizations operate more effectively and provide real-time visibility into operational and financial performance. ERPA AI members and followers get preferred pricing off NetSuite, 40 to 45%. Just go to erpaai.com/NetSuite for more information. I'm Dan Goodstein. I head up ERPA AI. It's the Institute for Robotic Process Automation and Artificial Intelligence, as well as the Digital Enterprise Institute. We are a professional association, media, and peer-to-peer research network providing education, networking, and advice to over 130,000 members globally, all around automation, enterprise AI, and digital transformation. My co-host today is Kieran Gilmurray, Senior Advisor to ERPA AI, author, industry thought leader, and LinkedIn Top Voice, awarded the distinction of Best LinkedIn Influencer for AI and Marketing. Kieran, my friend, good to see you.
Excellent to be here, my friend. Happy whatever day of the week it is. I keep forgetting. We're just so busy.
Wednesday is podcast
Wednesday.
Wednesdays. That's the only reason I know.
Let's do it.
Good to see you. I heard that you were trying to watch the Netflix fight, the Tyson Paul fight, and you broke the internet. You broke Netflix and caused all kinds of buffering issues. How many TVs were you watching it on?
It must have been -7, do you know what I mean? But I have to say, isn't it fascinating? There's some UK boxing promoters who laughed at the internet not even that many years ago. Now the only business that is appearing is again back to show business. And it ain't about boxing, my friend. This is about number of subscribers. But I actually didn't watch the fight. I put Tyson Fury on. Watching a World Boxing Championship, maybe. Put our YouTuber friend on. Maybe less exciting. You sort of knew what was going to happen.
I don't know if I'm proud to say I didn't watch it or embarrassed to tell you I didn't even know it was on until the next day. But apparently I was in the minority. According to Netflix, they had 108 million people watched it, at least a minute of it, peaking at 65 million concurrent viewers. For comparison, that's about half of the amount of people that watch the Super Bowl, but that's the second largest event of its kind. And actually, it brings up some interesting things around the advertising business. In a world where you say, "Hey, is the traditional advertising dead?" Well, I guess it's not exactly traditional advertising, but TV advertising may not be dead if you can get 100 million people on a single event like that.
Well, do you know something? It shows you where we're moving. You remember a couple of years ago, the big talk was about immersive headsets, and we'd Ariana Grande. You could put on a headset, take part of a conference or what am I thinking? Pop show, whatever it is. And that sort of died in its death. But it's interesting because you and I bring at times 2 different perspectives: US, UK, European. Europe now, you start to see so many of these things been put online. Not 3D, avatar, XR, VR, but real life. I laugh. Real life boxing. Yeah. But from a YouTube perspective, I watch my son coming up 20 years old in the next couple of weeks. He doesn't watch TV anymore. Doesn't go near traditional advertising. This has been his life for the last, 10, 15 years. He really is not a digital native. Now he's starting to transfer. I have to laugh. I was joking him the other night. He's getting old. Now you and I are starting to see AI natives, but both generations are now consuming content online. Netflix, one of those places where now shows, production, world events are happening. So I'd be amazed if, the Super Bowl is not seen outside of the US on Netflix, or a
Yeah.
streaming service near you to get the numbers up, but they're making money out of it. Like you're talking tens
I
of
tell you
millions.
what, I canceled live TV a long time ago. It was supposed to be a 30-day just trial thing to see if I could do it, and I didn't miss it. I mean, the only time that you end up ever missing it is live sports, right? So it makes an interesting, play at the live sports business. Actually, Comcast today is talking about spinning off a bunch of its cable networks, probably for the same reasons. It's a struggling business, but keeping their sports properties. But yeah, just interesting evolution.
Sign of the times, my friend. It gives you more reason to go down to a local bar, watch sports on TV there.
There you go. You get to do it in real life, as the kids say. Well, listen,
Wow.
one of the big topics is this Microsoft Ignite event going on, and some really big announcements coming out of it yesterday. I think the top one being, what they're referring to as autonomous agents that can do repetitive tasks, event triggered actions, custom AI models, image analysis via OpenAI, voice enabled agents that are no code, low code. I'm not usually the alarmist guy, but watch out, RPA industry. This sounds a lot like RPA to me here.
Doesn't it just? Doesn't it just? And even UiPath the last couple of weeks, and I can't remember which version of UiPath event was on, maybe 7, 9, 11. I can't remember which, but good company, great to see them doing so well. Everybody's now into agentic AI or autonomous AI, same sort of thing, which is basically you're getting an agent, bot, in other words, in some shape, form or other, digital worker, to mimic, mirror, record, be well trained to do what you do, and then work by itself. So, for example, what they're talking about here is a variety of examples where, customer service agents, the one that industry must feel under attack all the time. They listen to the best calls, they work out the best way of doing it, and then an agent will take over, and then agents will swarm to work together to do handoffs. But the bit that nobody's explained to me, and this has been the same at RPA, intelligent RPA, whatever else, if the data's rubbish, then the bot digital work is learning rubbish. If you don't have logical workflows, then, and you follow the wrong person, the logical workflows are a little bit rubbish. But everybody's on the bandwagon to AGI. That's the bit that you keep hearing, our friend Sam Altman and others talk AGI, AGI, AGI. It's the biggest thing. But it's interesting. I laugh. I picked up my phone the other day. I went to type something. My auto text was rubbish. And I thought, wow, there's a little bit of a way to go before robots take over the world and agentics actually works. But I think it is going to be something that people are going to aim at. Now, whether they get there or not by whatever it is, 2030, I'm not sure. But lots of companies are starting to do really interesting things in this space. And where automation fell down a little bit was that purely fragile, needing to follow a workflow, needing to follow a routine, whereas life's a little bit fluffier. Like the edges are more blurred. And therefore, if you can put in a technology that works it out, works dumb humans out, and can play that back and then start to work together, then you go back to what Simon Altman was talking about a little while ago, and I followed up with an article on it, which is the one person, $1 billion company. In other words, it ain't just, it's one person, but there's tons of agentic agents working there in real time. And when you look at some of the techs around this, like the Synthesias or whatever else, and there's others are available, you can now put a face on things and get the agentic AI to go and do the stuff in the background as well. So exciting. Good to see Microsoft starting to do this, and they're really taking a lead, at least on the voice. But there's a lot of agentic companies out there at the moment. The key bit is finding the customers really using it and then being true agentic examples. Because on their website a little while ago, they put pets at home on as an example. Look it up. Interesting one. And they said, we're going to do credit chasing with agentic AI. And go, that is really sticking a square hole in a round peg. I was doing that in 1995 with a text file, So again, lots of hype, interesting space, but definitely one to watch.
I think why this one's different for me, Kieran, is that part of the announcement, which was kind of buried, I think, at least in what I saw, aside from the watch out RPA industry thing, is that they're going to have the ability to add SharePoint agents, right? And we talked a few weeks ago about Google Notebook for documents that you upload, or if you think of ChatGPT documents you upload, right? The issue is, I think, twofold. One is, do I want to have public access to, put my data in a public form? But the other is, hey, I've got all this institutional knowledge. So how does this LLM help me? if these SharePoint agents actually work on data, which is, by the way, where is the data? All over Microsoft products, right? So now all of a sudden, all this data is in your SharePoint, and now the models are working based off your institutional data. They're also adding a prompt library. So you build these kind of shortcuts, these templates, and then you can kind of reuse them, which, by the way, a lot of people tried to do in the RPA industry as well, but it wasn't quite that simple. Imagine having a template library or a shortcut, prompt shortcut library. So you start building, I think, this institutional knowledge, these institutional capabilities. You're not starting from scratch every time. I think it's impactful. And then, of course, they're upgrading things in Teams, in PowerPoint, in Pages, via analytics, and they're adding this kind of recall capability, which has been controversial because of the privacy issues. But imagine an agent that actually remembers as well as, or maybe better than your employees do, about what you've done in the past and what issues you've had and how to overcome them. That's very interesting. And actually, Google's Gemini is getting a very similar feature. They're calling it a memory feature, but it's essentially the same thing as this recall ability, where they're not just these one-off transactional conversations, but it actually builds over time.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating tech. I genuinely do think they're on to something here. The interesting bit just about using institutional knowledge, all the better, because people have a lot in their head. People struggle, leave, go, and companies are a little bit stuffed. But you need to get the data into SharePoint. You need good quality flows. How do you know which bit of data is right and which bit is wrong? And if agents are starting to monitor what people are doing and mirroring what they're doing, and then you put some manners around it, and as you say, the organizational data behind it, it's going to be interesting. I think the bit I'm looking forward to is a bit like the autonomous vehicles. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as levels. We're very much in level 1, maybe level 2 and 3, but it's getting a lot of focus, and I think it's getting too much focus, and there is too much benefit to be had to ignore this. And if you're, shared services center, any sort of business, if you can start to get this to work, could you strip 40, 60% out of your cost? My excitement is humans are messy. I hope this technology sees the messiness, accepts it, and helps us put sense around it like a good manager does. But the whole host of implications around this as well. But it's exciting, genuinely like it. Maybe this is the RPA we've always been looking for.
Maybe. And some good news for Google on the regulatory side. Actually, in your neck of the woods, the UK's Competition and Markets Authority has approved their investment in Anthropic. It's a $2.3 billion investment and partnership that was originally thought to be maybe potentially blocked.
Yeah, it's interesting times. UK have a government change, of course. UK absolutely needs money invested in the economy. I think we'll find, with Donald Trump as well in the US, the impression we get, it'll be somewhat less regulated, with businesses getting the opportunity to do more. Well, Microsoft have invested in OpenAI, let's be honest, 49% share and observation status on the board, so there's precedent before now. They put in 2.3 billion in Anthropic. Oddly enough, it's a big number, but it's probably a drop in the ocean as well. So good to see it. Why not? We need more competition, not less. My only question, Dan, is it appears to be, the brightest minds on earth, like we DeepMind a couple of years ago, bought by Google. We've some of the best companies out there, but we're starting to narrow down if we're really, because these models demand massive computing power to Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. What I would personally like to see, and this is where a competition watchdog's going to struggle because of the power you need behind these boxes, is how do we get 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 more Microsofts created on the planet? That's the bit I'd really love to see. The competition is good. This is healthy. Microsoft set the precedent, so pop in a couple of billion. Hopefully, the goodness it benefits consumers.
So UK is doing a green light thing, and the US is putting the brakes on some AI advancement, concerned about Chinese competition. So I guess we reversed. Usually it's the US that writes the blank check with this stuff, and the UK that slows it down. But this commission they're calling it a Manhattan Project style AI initiative, concerned about China.
Yeah, but this has been around for numbers of years. Do you know what I mean? I think when AlphaGo, just to talk about our friends from DeepMind, took on what the the chap in the Go, the Chinese program, I think it was Chinese or Asian gaming program, they suddenly saw that AI was technically going to be something absolutely crazy and amazing. And at that stage, I think China turned around and says, look, we're going to invest heavily in this. Now, again, why not? Like when you look at the power behind AI and what it can do, if you can create an industrial or economic advantage with this, then absolutely brilliant. I would say where maybe this is coming from is a mixture of fear of competition. And like all these things, there's going to be some military use of it in some shape, form or other. So, the technology will bleed across both. The fact that the government in the US are now going, folks, look, this is a big thing, this is massive, and we want to use the best of commercial, in this call to arms. I think it's fantastic. I'd love to see more governments, not because of an anti-Chinese thing, don't get me wrong. I'd just like to see more governments putting more money into AI, but also AI ethics as well, because we go back to agentics earlier on, we talk about AI now. There's a lot of repercussions for that. Am I going to be managed by a robot? Am I going to be managed by a swarm of robots? We're talking about education later on, but one of our weakest things we do, I know in Europe and the UK, is actually train our managers, coach them to be really great people, great individuals, great leaders. But now they're going to have to manage agents and they're going to have to manage workers. I seen earlier on, I had this today in a client site, the belief that they have an AI is overwhelming, and AI and OpenAI, Anthropic, doesn't matter. They all hallucinate, they all make stuff up. If we give agency over to robots, digital workers, whatever else, and step back, we're really in trouble here. Never mind the impact on jobs and taxes and incomes or something else. So I kind of like us to innovate like hell, but a bit like the medical environment and pharma, have a bit of regulation and a bit of manners around it at the same time, and go forward without putting too many brakes on. But we do need to think about the repercussions of allowing us to compete with AI or focus solely on AI. As I said, and you'll hear me saying it later on in the talk, I wish we talked as much about our people and got as excited about our people and invested as much in our people as we did technology. Imagine what a society and what a business environment we might actually have.
Well, you know me, I love a good segue. I think that's a good segue to our main topic, which is AI effect on education. But to not lead with the punchline. I mean, I agree with you. I think so much of the issue is I was going to say lack of education, but lack of honest conversation about the reality of some of this stuff, right? I mean, I think we spend so much time. And listen, I guess we're even guilty on this show of doing it, right? It's very easy to have a conversation about the risks and the pros and the cons and all of that. But at the end of the day, there is this kind of inevitability thing. And, if we can stop kind of debating and arguing about whether it's going to happen and really focus on how it should happen, maybe better, right? Because then we can start changing the jobs. We can start focusing on, how to educate people accordingly, and not kind of dragging our feet on some of this stuff. But that's just my 2 cents. But so set us up, Kieran. You sent me this article. I think it was last week. It was an article in the Times by a name I didn't recognize, but apparently he's a bigger name over in your neck of the woods in the UK. Anthony Selden had this editorial basically saying we've got 2 years to save learning, and it's very much a doom and gloom piece about all the issues I think with AI, but especially the fact that he's saying unchecked it's going to rob children their ability to think for themselves. So is there merit to this, or is this just another alarmist non-tech guy trying to scare everybody?
Yeah, I don't know him personally, so let's give him partial benefit of the doubt here. No happy stories make the press. Let's just be absolutely honest. The ones that are off at the extremes do. What he was essentially saying in this article is, look, if we lose the ability to ask questions, to critically think, and just accept what AI is giving us, then we're truly in a horrible show. And you sort of go, well, what do you mean? And let me give you a real world example. It's classic, and now one of those tales along with there's two I always remember. One is predictive analytics. It's about the father finding out his daughter was pregnant by the supermarket in the UK sending the family particular product out to the house that they may want to try in advance of the birth. And of course, lo and behold, the daughter had been searching on the website for different foods and different outfits and whatever else, and the algorithm had picked it up. This is one of those where education wise, you're really sitting there going, okay, well, let's walk our way through this. So if I believe everything that this tells me and I don't question it and I don't judge it, then will I leave myself in trouble? And you sort of go, it isn't just kids. There was two lawyers and they're in America somewhere. It's a rough story. They were representing an airline. They went to court. They presented some legal arguments. It says, look, in these five, six pieces of legal precedent, we believe we've won the case. Judge, we'd like you to rule in favor of our airline. There you go. And the judge went, well, I don't recognize any of that. And of course, the opposition counsel, we can't find that legislation. Lo and behold, the judge asked the two lawyers, where did you get your research? And they went, well, we asked ChatGPT. So ChatGPT had hallucinated. And you sort of go, hold on, we're talking about kids here. We're talking about grown-ass adults who are highly qualified individuals, have bought into let's assume they bought into the Kool-Aid as opposed to we're taking a shortcut, believing that AI can do absolutely everything. So this professor is sort of saying, look, if we just believe everything that it's told, we hand over all human agency to AI, we don't question it, we don't judge it, then yes, we will be out of jobs. But there's another side to this that sort of goes, well, look, I pick up a scientific calculator and I run my fingers through the numbers. I'm not worried that I haven't got an abacus and that I can't write numbers on a page and draw it out in a handcrafted manual way. So I think there's a bit of exaggeration in the story. There's a little bit of, and it goes back to what we're saying, look, let's do this right. Let's make sure we're not giving away the keys to the kingdom and handing everything over to the bots and the big companies and doing ourselves out of jobs and losing talent and the ability to critically judge. But at the same time, look, as you and I were saying, look, we need to make progress, but it's not progress at all costs. So that was roughly the gist of the story. And overall, I agree. You know, I don't do scientific calculations, and I didn't do, we have A-level maths, you have high school maths, but I know the math behind what I'm doing. I know the weaknesses of generative AI. I know the weaknesses behind RPA, and I know its strengths, and I know how it can go wrong. And that's all important, and that's experience, because that allows me to advise companies and help companies get out of a hole. But if we get so lazy that AI does everything for us, then we really are in trouble. And I kind of agree with what he's saying.
You bring up a really good point. It's funny because I think I struggled this morning trying to figure out how do I feel about this debate. You know, I can make arguments on both sides, but what I came back to was, you know, the natural evolution of things. You know, is this just the natural evolution? And the example that I thought of was the same one you thought of, which is a calculator, right? You know, I think most kids my generation can't do the same calculations that my father's generation could do, because they didn't have to, because they had these scientific and graphing calculators, and you know, and they don't really need to, right? I think that was a debate for a really long time that, oh, one day you're going to have to learn how to do this stuff. And the reality is I've never had to do any of that stuff that my graphing calculator did for me, because it's done for me. But you bring up this great point, which is nobody ever questioned whether the graphing calculator's result was correct, right? Now, you know, you do. And I'm not sure, based on all of the concerns we've talked about, you know, related to social media and other things, that the average child does either. I mean, I was with my kids yesterday, and they were having a conversation with their friends, and I was kind of walking back from hockey practice, walking back quietly behind them, secretly listening to what they were talking about, because they were talking about something that they had seen on YouTube. And my son mentioned something, and my daughter questioned it, and their friend questioned it. And then my daughter finally said, she's 8, she's 9, finally said, well, you know, you can't believe everything that you see on YouTube. And it was such a great, I was such a proud parenting moment, right? To hear them say that when they didn't know I was eavesdropping. But that's the thing, right? It's like you wonder, even as adults, we wonder about the validity of the source. We've talked about that on this show as well. You know, so how do we? But so I'm going to try to bring it back to that article. Yeah. Are we actually losing critical thinking, or are we actually creating even better critical thinking, right? Because now there's no established, if we teach it correctly, there's no established source, right? It's interpretation of multiple sources, multiple, resources, and weighing the validity of all of those. So I could make the argument that maybe it creates more higher thinking, no?
Yeah, look, it's really where you want to come from this, and you can come from this in numbers of directions. Look, at its worst, generative AI tools like ChatGPT, Anthropic, Gemini are hallucinating. They make stuff up. That's just the reality of the tool. Or they produce something that potentially has been trained on something horrific. Now, we don't quite know what the models were trained on, but if it's been trained on Twitter, if it's been trained on, open image libraries, open video libraries, and let's be honest, some of the stuff that's on the internet is, ugh, that's not one you want anyone to see. And I know lots of companies are outsourcing the human checker in the loop to remove some of that video content. God help those people who are sitting in centers around the world, paid not a lot of money to turn around and say that is horrendous and that's not. So again, there's so many moral implications there. But I use the example of my son. Again, this should be turned this into parenting class, not actual AI class. And he sits there, and it's both sons, so 120, 117, and they've incorporated all of this technology into how they work and how they learn. So one of my sons is studying for advanced A-level mathematics, and what he is actually doing is he gets his teachers good, but he's also got YouTube sitting there beside him at all times, teaching him how to do things. There's guides, there's great websites. He's also got ChatGPT open that'll give him the deconstruction of the question, help him with the maths, and act as a digital assistant and a digital tutor. But what he is doing is questioning, going and asking for multiple engines to give him multiple varieties of the answer to make sure that the answer hasn't been hallucinated, that it's actually correct. So he has got the mindset that I'm going to use a tool, but like a scientific calculator, and I'm not using crayon and ink or pens and sticks on a field, but I'm not quite trusting everything that I'm getting, and I'm going to use that variety. So this augmentation piece is absolutely key for him studying for his exams. My son's side, he's working for a big consultancy group. He doesn't put any of their consulting information in, but he will reference the tool to say, look, I'm trying to write a particular essay for my university course that's on a Friday. He does this apprenticeship model, 4 days in business, 1 day learning. And he's going, what's the construct of this? And he's asking it questions that, his tutor's only available on Fridays. So he's asking the questions during the week and getting examples and. So we've always worried about, technology making us dumb. Calculator was one that was going to make us dumb. Believe it or not, writing was going to make us dumb. I can't remember who it was back in the day in about the 1500s turn around and say, but if you learn how to write and everyone can write, then you're going to lose the great ability to tell stories orally and you're going to become dumber. Obama, numbers of years ago in his exit speech went, well, automation is going to destroy jobs. Kennedy in the 60s, technology is going to destroy everything. It's never the tool, unless the tool is inherently faulty. These are getting better and better and better. It's how you use the tool or how you bring the tool into your life. So, if I am, and we bring it back to education here, I want to encourage pupils to critically think anyway. It doesn't matter whether ChatGPT is there or not. Who's to say that the author and their narrative wasn't Western privilege, wasn't, a biased author who had a particular viewpoint? I want my kids, if they're studying English or media or something else, to assess newspapers together. Technology is just another medium, and I want them to be able to critically judge what they're seeing and then form their own opinion. I don't want them to be a product of a social media algorithm where they just accept everything that's spouted to them, because you and I know the way the algorithms are constructed. The more extreme the views, the more you're going to stay on, and therefore that helps whoever it is, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it, to keep your audience there and serve you more of the same stuff. And you'll eventually end up believing that everybody must think the same things. I want varieties of opinions, varieties of constructs. And if we can teach people to do that in school, all the better, because it'll prepare them later on in life. Whereas if we do give the heavy analysis and the grunt and the grind to the automation and allow us to have the human empathy, the communication skills, the critical judgment, all the bit that we should be practicing and better at, then we're guaranteeing our jobs for as long as we humanly can in the future. So I'd love to see, teachers using this. And I do worry about digital divide, because lots of Western countries have the money to do this and others don't. But getting them to do it to save them time, getting ideas for their classrooms. If I turn around and ask you to give me 100 ideas to do with a pen, it'll probably take you weeks. If I ask ChatGPT 100 things to do with a pen, it'll be 10 minutes. So where do we give teachers, of all ilks and sorts, these types of tools to allow them to prepare lesson plans, to get ideas, to save time, to free them up to spend teaching the kids a critical judgment? Where do we give the kids and all the students all of the tooling they need to shave as much time off as we can to allow them to do the human learning side, the judgment, the critical thinking, the imagination, the storytelling? I'm never worried about tech. I'm just worried about how it's employed.
So one of the things that I think concerns me is the way that the information is going to be obtained, right? I remember years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, reading something about the mental health field by a doctorate in the mental, and he was talking about research and how research is done, and academic research and scientific research, and talking about the fact that his concern at the time was sometimes the correct information, if you search for it in Google, might be the 7th or 8th page, right? Not buried way back where nobody ever goes. And that 99.9% of the world is looking at the top 5 search results, which, I don't even know if at that point where they're even marked as sponsored in Google, right? So that was a concern then. Now, one of the issues I have with I have like a widget on my Google search that actually does the open AI search on the side. And it's been wrong so many times that I don't even use it anymore because it's been wrong. And like on yes or no questions, right, it'll be wrong a good chunk of the time. So I find myself actually going back to the old way that I learned of doing research and going through multiple sources and all those things. But will the average person, the average student do that in a year or 5 years or 10 years? And how do we, ensure? And one of the issues that he does talk about in this article, the Times editorial, is, the interactions, that we used to have with experts, for example, aren't happening now.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, we are going to have a generation of AI natives. Remember, we used to talk about digital natives, but now everything's going to be embedded with AI. So it's AI natives are coming out. And a bit like a little while ago, everybody believed what they saw on social media until the stories come out talking about bias and algorithmic models and how they were constructed. And AI will be the same thing. I don't think everybody's used to hallucinations. I think people look at it and they're so amazed by what must be true. It's in the computer, forgetting that the idiot who wrote it in the computer is not. So I do worry about that. I genuinely do. But if we believe everything we're told in life, then we're in trouble. And it doesn't matter whether, again, as I say, go back 100 years. If you look at the numbers of writers that are now cancelled, and we see a lot of this in the UK, people branded as woke culture, but there's lots of writers still cancelled because, where their money came from, where their inspiration came from, where the topics came from, were never particularly, what I would say is reflective of all of society. We're seeing that in the algorithmic models as well. These things tend to come out of Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley still happens to be, largely dominated. And I use the words factually, not meant as a criticism, white male, pale steel, 90% or whatever else. They don't represent minorities, don't represent people of color, don't represent cultures. If you look at Saudi Arabia at the moment, they're spending, hundreds of millions, if not billions, building their own large language model to put in, Arabic culture, fantastic. Just see the diversity that's happening. So I think it's up to us, Dan, still, we need to educate people without scaring them. Maybe we need to do this to get their attention, to say, look, just because it's in the computer doesn't mean it's correct. Go and get a variety of sources and understand what it means to apply critical judgment, take a variety of ideas, and then form your own opinion. That's what it means to be human. And it doesn't matter whether you're using ChatGPT, Google, or 10 different textbooks. Just learn that skill because it stays with you for life. My biggest worry is that we rely on these tools. If these tools, and when you were saying, Dan, the answer's wrong, the answer's wrong because you've industry experience, you've decades of it. But if people don't have those entry jobs because agentics comes in that takes all the grunt and the grind and the front end, or, we put in agentic robots to take over service desks at hotels and take over, so-called service jobs, then where do you get your start in your career? Where do you learn the basics? Where do you learn to see things that are wrong, get yourself out of a hole in something else? And that's my biggest concern, overbelief in the tooling and the removing of foundational, for me, core elements of learning that allow you to gain experience and know how to be a critical judge so that you come up with a better answer. That's my biggest fear.
Yeah, yeah. The last thing I want to mention on this article, which actually is the thing that I think concerns me the most. Maybe this is more of a societal thing, or maybe this is just natural evolution thing. But he talks about the decline in parental reading. He says that according to the National Literacy Trust, less than half of parents are now reading to their children on a regular basis. Electronic devices are replacing traditional reading time, which most experts believe is impacting child development. And overall, these devices and AI are replacing human interactions, especially in children and in the elderly. So, that makes you think. Part of me is like, well, as sad as that is that just the natural evolution of things? And we talked about before we went live that my kids are better already at technology than my wife and probably soon me. But is it at a cost, or is that just the natural evolution of things?
Yeah, but so let me pick that apart a little bit. It ain't the technology. If you're not telling your kids a story at night, it's you not telling your kids a story at night. Now, if you're not physically able to, for whatever reason you're away, then the next best thing can be, actually the fact that they're getting a story and they're hearing something and you're engaging with them using technology or something else. So it's neither good nor bad. The tech will only do what we tell it to do. We can't blame the tech for our not spending time with our kids. And as ever, and you and I know this, Dan, you get one lifetime. They grow up so quickly, it's unreal. You can't get moments back that have disappeared. So why give up those things to tech? And that's not to say you don't bring tech into your storytelling, because there's something about, explaining with words or sounds or something else at the end of a night. But my kids, for example, have had access to all of the technologies you can imagine. One uses it to read stories, read magazines, read articles, watch videos, and it's a different style of learning, not a replacement of learning. It's just different style, YouTube videos, whatever else. And the other one still reads books and reads magazines to his heart's content. And I talk to him about the books and the theories and the politics and everything else to have that engagement with them. So let's not give away ourselves to tech or put tech in front of beautiful moments that we should be living with our families.
Yeah, I don't think it's an either or, right? If it's done right, when I have these conversations with friends that are not in the industry or not in technology at all, they are tending to lean towards the more negative on this stuff, and they ask me, well, do you think it's a positive? And aside from saying, hey, just go check out our podcast, we talk about this for an hour every week. What I always tell people, and I still believe this, is that proper use, well-educated use of these technologies should ultimately lead to more time for those human interactions, right? And nobody talks about that. And I think that's the bigger narrative here, is that these things maybe these things should be used for tasks that are not superhuman tasks, not what makes us, there's great stuff around, AI art and all this. There's a new AI Hollywood studio coming out this week, I saw, but as cool as that is, maybe that's not the best use of it. Maybe the best use of it is, again, back to the promises of automation and RPA, eliminating a lot of that mundane so that we have more time for the higher quality work and also the higher quality interactions.
Yeah, I say, repeat what I said earlier on. It's never the tool, it's how you apply the tool, and that's entirely under our gift.
So you had a really great blog about just preparing students for tomorrow's workforce and really leveraging AI in a positive way. What's your what's your advice for anybody watching who, sees this and is looking for a roadmap?
Yeah, apart from read that article. Yeah, so on that site, I think there's that, plus agentics, plus tons on the risks and ethics around AI as well. Because you and I have the same philosophy, Dan. This shows another example of it. Give people as much information as you can. All boats rise on a floating tide. This just walks you through the pros and cons, the opportunities that are there, some of the risks that are there. Again, it's that little bit, bring yourself to the article and bring your critical judgment to the article. As you said, look, if we can remove the mundane, give teachers access to the tools and things that they need, let's also, we can't be deniers here, we can't push water uphill. Give our kids access to this tech and teach them how to use it, and teach them when it's right and teach them when it's wrong, and teach them that critical judgment side of things. Then we've got teachers freed up to spend more time with kids, and we've got kids who know how to use these tools critically and judgmentally in the nicest possible sense to allow them to develop, hopefully further. But tech ain't going away, and therefore the key bit is preparing people properly for the future. That's the message of that article.
Yeah. Well, you can check it out at KieranGilmurray.com. In the meantime, everybody, thanks for joining us. Have a great week. We're back on Wednesday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. And in the meantime, if there's anything you're working on and want some free advice, speak to someone like Kieran, or just learn some art of the possible from our team of subject matter experts, you can schedule a free networking call at irpaai.com/networking. Kieran, great to see you, buddy. Have a great night.
You too, friend. You too. See you soon. Thanks, everyone, for listening in.